Hello everyone, I have no financial interests to be disclosed for the following presentation. So I will present you today MR spirometry, and especially this study we performed to challenge the reliability of the technique and to define its nominal features in free breathing. I would like first to introduce standard spirometry, which is the reference exam to assess the ability to efficiently inhale and exhale. For this purpose, airflow is measured as a function of time by the spirometer at the mouth over forced inspiration-expiration cycles. It enables to retrieve flow volume loops, like the one you can see here. These loops are really important, especially their shapes, since they allow doctors to characterize respiratory disease, in particular obstructive and restrictive ones. This technique is simple and reliable. However, it requires forced breathing, which is not always possible, and the measure at the mouth is only global. We recently developed a technique which produces regional flow volume loops. It relies on a 10-minute long 2D ultrashort echo time sequence over free breathing. We use a self-navigator from Space Center to monitor an intrinsic respiratory signal. The respiratory dynamic is then reconstructed using a retrospective dating conjointly on the amplitude and the phase of the intrinsic respiratory signal. This allows us to preserve the natural hysteresis of the lung function. An elastic registration enables to extract deformation fields, and you can see on the right trajectories followed by some lung voxels. From these deformation fields, we compute the Jacobian to infer local volumes at each temporal phase of the respiratory cycle. And we compute its temporal derivative to infer local flows. So we have volume and flows. We finally have local flow volume loops throughout the lung and a full characterization of the local ventilation and its dynamics. A first proof of concept has been published, and today we explore the clinical potential of the technique. To do this, we evaluated the method on a cohort of healthy volunteers lying in supine and prone position. This allows us first to evaluate its sensitivity to gravity. Since the work of Kaneko and his team, it is known that gravity affects the distribution of local ventilation, inducing an increased volume variation in the more gravity-dependent region, represented here by a steeper slope. The change of position is a simple experimental parameter, and each volunteer is its own reference. Through the design of the study, we can also assess the robustness of the technique by repeating acquisitions for each position and by using a diverse cohort of healthy volunteers. Our objective was to establish nominal maps of 3D spirometry while ensuring the reliability of the technique. To do this, we had to make choices regarding the parameters evaluated. On a typical free breathing flow volume loops, like the one you can see here, it is possible to extract a lot of statistics. We chose to focus on two biomarkers, which are present in the literature of free breathing spirometry. So it's tidal volume and the peak expiratory flow. We also evaluated the anisotropy index, which reflects another nature of the respiratory mechanics, the anisotropy of its deformations. This parameter is calculated directly from the Green-Lagrange tensor, and these three parameters are evaluated locally for each voxel of the lung. So it's with very small volumes involved. During a respiratory cycle, it is of the order of microliter of air that is ventilated in each voxel. To assess the local robustness of our measurements, we wondered how to compare all of these maps. Indeed, you can see here an overview of tidal volume maps across our cohort of volunteers, who have very different morphologies, but also very different lung capacities. To overcome these two elements, we need to normalize our maps. So special normalization with an elastic registration, but also an histogram-based normalization by a rescale of global values. Once this double normalization is performed, we obtain these maps. We could then compare voxel-wise and plot the mean and standard deviation along the 25 volumes. When we analyze the mean and the standard deviation across the volunteers, we can notice that values are largely inhomogeneous across the lung with patterns that appears. But these patterns are really well reproducible across the volunteers, demonstrating a good reproducibility across volunteers. And this good reproducibility of functional patterns is found for the three biomarkers evaluated here. When we look at the location of these patterns, here for tidal volumes, we can clearly identify the gravity lung dependence phenomenon, with higher ventilation in the posterior region when lying in supine, and higher ventilation in the anterior region when lying prone. Furthermore, the basal segments of the lung also seems to contribute more to the respiration, which can be explained by their proximity to the diaphragm. If we look at the peak expiratory flow, we find the same patterns, a clear sensitivity to pulmonary gravity dependence, as well as the importance of basal segments. We can see that this map seems correlated with tidal volumes, but it's for a cohort of LC volunteers. Finally, the anisotropy of deformation is not sensitive to gravity. Larger values are found in the posterior segment for both positions, due to the constraints of the rib cage. We also have high values close to the diaphragm. These maps reveal reproducible patterns across LC volunteers and thus open up a new way to explore the lung function from these nominal references. Collaborations are now underway to evaluate the diagnostic performance of 3D spirometry on asthma, COPD, and pump disease. Thank you for your attention.